There it is. Incredible. The treasure of the ages. There it is. Wow. Man the moon. Man the moon. The lunar age has begun.
We have reached the final talk, but the best is yet to come. Let's meet Daniel Rodriguez. With years of experience in IT support and a recent focus on process automation, Daniel is well-versed in the language of efficiency. In his downtime, he finds joy in the speed of Formula One, the strumming of his guitar, and the artistry of 3D impressions. We may ask you to print like a Ryan rocket here for next edition of ShuttleCon. Anyway, the rocket will have to wait, because now we are more interested in learning about employee user management, key practices, and tools. Let's go.
Hello there. Thank you, Anna, for the presentation. As I say, I'm going to talk about the employee user management in different types of company, like, I don't know, startups or any bigger company that you may think about. Also, I will try to focus on the key practices and tools that you can use for it, and focusing in how have we managed it. But first things first, what I'm referring when I talk about employee user management, well, basically I'm focusing of the management of the creation of all the accounts and accesses that are needed for any employee that starts a journey with us. All the maintenance of that accesses, tools, and permissions during his journey, because maybe he can change his role, change his project that he's working on, and all of that kind of things that can happen. Also, I will talking about how do we manage that configuration, because there are several ways to do it. You can do it manually, automatically, or by using any kind of tool. Why is this important? Well, basically, it's an important aspect because you can keep control of what information does the employee access. This means, for example, HR information should be only accessible by HR department. Internal developing sources and documentation should be only accessible to developers, or any designed asset should be accessible by any designer. Also, you should be able to provide access to all the tools that you may need. For example, if you need a Figma account, if you need a license for any kind of tool, you should be able to provide it from the first time the user starts working with you. Of course, this is a thing that seems pretty basic, but sometimes this fails. And just to give an example, I will talk about a real situation that happened on my first job. Basically, I was starting to work as a service desk technician from an external company for a client. This client needed us to manage all the incidents that the users had in their company, and we needed to access all the information about the equipment they had assigned. So they had an inventory tool, and they gave us access to it. The thing is that, yes, they gave us access to it, but also no, we couldn't see also the equipment that they had assigned, but also any contract that they had signed with any third-party provider for any kind of service that they had. Like, for example, I don't know, we couldn't see even the gardening contracts that they had. This shouldn't be relevant, but also we could see, for example, external auditories and all that kind of thing that we shouldn't access, being an external user. So putting our IT manager, this is a fucking disaster. So yeah, let's meet the basics on this. Basically, what should we do in an ideal world? What would be the ideal workflow of this? Basically, when the employee starts to work with the company, all of the accounts should be created at the first time. So the day that the user starts, He should already have all the accesses, tools, credentials, everything he needs to start working, or just to access the documentation or any asset that he should need. Also, as I said before, during the employee's journey, we should be able to manage all the changes, project roles, as I said before. And at the end of the journey, all the accesses should be removed and the sensitive information should be backed up. This is more of a legal matter, just in case it's needed in the future. So there are a lot of ways to do this, and we could use a lot of tools for it. Let's focus on the basics. All these tools can be divided into two groups, the proprietary tools and the open source tools. This is important because depending on the type of organization you have, you will be able to use one or another, usually. Of course, they have their pros and cons. Open source tend to be cheaper, and usually they have a wider community support if the community is active. Also, integration with third-party providers, like, for example, I don't know, integrating a Google service with a Microsoft one, or I'm inventing Figma with Adobe or GIMP. It's usually easier. Also, on the other side, in the proprietary tools, they will always count, well, most of the times will count with enterprise support, which is a specialized support for the problem that you will face. Also, integration with the tools that this provider has, like, for example, in a Microsoft environment, let's talk about the Office tools. It will be easier to integrate it with that. Also, they tend to be better consolidated in the market. On the other side, open source and proprietary tools have their cons, like, for example, the open source tend to be self-managed. So if you have an issue and you don't know how to fix it, you're screwed. The community can delay a little bit, especially for security updates. For example, let's say that a vulnerability appears in the PHP version that is using your code you're using. They can delay a little bit more than the proprietary tool to implement a security patch. And also the development can be abandoned at all if, I don't know, if a new tool appears and the community likes it more, basically that tool, the previous tool, will disappear. On the other side, the proprietary tools, they are usually expensive. So if you are a little startup, maybe you just can't afford it. And as I said before, integration with third-party tools can be a pain because it can be blocked. Every company doesn't want you to use the competence tools. Also, there are some things that some type of organizations faced. I'm going to focus on startups. Basically, this type of companies tend to be smaller, so maybe the IT department doesn't even exist, or its function it's divided between several teams. For example, taking the case of this company of Empathy, more of the things were done by platform and another. Also, tend to use a wider variety of tools. Like, for example, a designer likes to use GIMP, another one likes to use Photoshop, another one likes to use Figma. In the finance in the finance positions, somebody wants to use Google Sheets, somebody Microsoft Excel. So they tend to have a very wide variety of applications, and that permissions and licenses are difficult to manage. Also, changes in tools use people that work on the projects, and the very same projects tend to change faster than a regular company that usually has a better consolidated way of work. So, of course, we face these issues, both on Empathy and Motive. So let's talk about how we have solved it. Basically, let's talk about how we did it before. We had a manual process that basically involved the manual creation of any account that the user would need, the account of Google Workspace, the account of Atlassian, give the license of JetBrains manually. That involves a lot of mess, and basically it could take like an hour more or less to create an account, per account. This meant that if 5 people joined that day, 5 hours of your day would be creating that account. Also, tracking, it's difficult to track permissions. Like, for example, you have to remember that this user had this license. Again, the example of JetBrains, you have to remember that this user had a JetBrains access and a Zoom webinar license, for example, and you have to manually deactivating all of the accounts. This can make you that in some tool you forget to remove the access for the user, and when you review it, there was an employee that left the company 3 years ago, and you have it there. So, what are we using now? Well, we are using several set of tools. Of course, we are mixing proprietary and open source. In this case, we are using Personio as a source of truth for the employee's status. Like, for example, if he is active, inactive, PTO, what team is he working, what project is he in, and all of that kind of stuff. What groups should be he assigned, and so on. With that, we use Terraform and custom integrations written in Node and Python that basically are scripts that run through the API of the different services. And in another place, we have a separate workflow for the inventory management that is kind of related with the user management. Basically, in this case, we have Snide, we have Mosile as an MDM, and Fleet as a NOS query tool. So this is how they are related. This is a chaos. So I'm going to explain it in the best way I can. Basically, what we have here is that we have some GitHub actions configured that run against the host that, for example, Camilo talked about before. And yeah, what they first do is they try to retrieve any information from Personio to generate some files that we will be working on. Also, in that GitHub repository, we have Terraform that is running, creating the Google accounts for the special users, generic ones, and every group, basically the whole group structure. So, for example, this is what we have in GitHub. We have an action for Atlassian, for Empathy Platform, to remove users from GitHub. All of that kind of actions that help us to give access to the main tools we use here. Also, at the right of the screen, we have all the files that we use. You can see for JavaScript files, Python scripts, and the files that we use as an auxiliary for being read by those. So, as I was saying before, we use Personio as source of truth. Works writes the files that we are going to use in every script or in every integration, and then we have the creation. The first thing we do is to create the account. Basically, the account, we use it in Google Workspace. It's duplicated because distribution lists are also groups. So yeah. When the account is created, basically what happens is that an email is sent to the user saying, okay, welcome, you have started work here. And it gives you the credentials and access to the main tools that we will have. Slack, the Jira management, the Confluence that where all the documentation it's stored, and the handbook, all of the information that this employee will find interesting in his first day with us. Then we continue with other services. Most of them, the integration of the creation of the account is done by a single sign-on through Google Workspace. Like, for example, the creation of the account in Atlassian or in Zoom or in Tailscale. But we use the auxiliary files that we created before to assign them to the different groups that they will have. Like, for example, if an employee starts working with us today, he will have assigned the Atlassian groups to be able to access Confluence, and every single board that we have, he will have his permissions on the VPN in Tailscale, and basically everything he needs. Also, there is another thing that the user is created in Snippet, so later on he can be managed in the inventory part of the workflow. So that was all about the user management. Now let's talk about the inventory. Basically, what we have here in Snippet is the source of truth for every equipment that we have assigned: laptops, access cards, screens, every accessory that we may have created or give to the employee. And the laptops are managed in two ways. They are managed through the MDM, which is the mobile device management tool that we have, and the FleetDM, that is the query tool that we have, that is used to collect and monitor the devices. So I will start talking about the Snippet. This is this is a screenshot of the dashboard that we have. Basically, you can see that we have all the people registered there, all the assets, and all the accessories that we have. Here, basically, the admin team or us will be managing all the assets that you have assigned. Like, for example, I don't know, you have a laptop with this serial number. We can see what specs does it have, or well, basically how old is the laptop you have assigned. But basically, all the information we may need to start troubleshooting your equipment. Also, on the MDM part, we have the, I didn't say it before, Snippet is an open source tool. Well, also, as I was saying, here on the MDM part, we manage all the configuration of the laptop. Basically, when you start working with us, we have an integration that is the zero-touch deployment made by Mario. That basically what it does is when you sign in the Google account in your laptop, all of the configurations and tools are downloaded to your laptop and are applied. This means that your laptop will be compliant with the security measures that we have here, like, for example, file vault, antivirus, and all of the security related settings that we have for complying with some ISO certification and all that. Also, when it finishes, you will have all the internal chat tools installed, the video calls, the preferred browser in the company. Basically, all you will need to start using the laptop right away. And yeah, as a last open source tool that we have is FleetDM. That is a tool that we are keeping an eye on it because it also in the future it wants to become an MDM. But for now on, we are using it for basically collecting stats of the equipment. Like, for example, you may find that your laptop struggles a little bit. And we can see that, okay, I don't know, maybe Google Chrome is consuming too much RAM, or you have a process that you didn't know about it running in the background. Also, we can push some more queries to retrieve any information that we have that we may consider important for troubleshooting. And yeah, basically, well, we didn't do this alone, of course. We have to thank you, a lot of people. In the first place, we should thank you, Guillermo Vigil, because it was the main implementer of these tools and the Terraform part. you can check his GitHub profile. And he has cool, interesting things. Also, we have to thank you a lot, the platform team, because it helps. They help us every day. We're solving some of the issues with Terraform or with any hosting node that is on the actions. And the interesting and admin team that basically gave us the structure to start managing the employees in the different tools. Yeah, I think that was all for my part.
There it is.
Incredible.
The treasure of the ages.